What's going on, everybody? Super, super excited today. I've got a guest who is fairly new to the YouTube community, a great collector, a really great guy, a guy I'm happy to call a friend. We'll talk about how we met and how that all went down during this conversation. But this is a channel that if you're not subscribed to, Southern Collector 14, you are missing out. And he's got an incredible collection, a really likable guy, and the history that he likes to share in his videos is second to none. So I'm excited to have this conversation. I hope that you sit back and relax because we're going to talk for a bit here because I just like talking to the guy. So this is my friend Tony, the Southern Collector. How you doing, buddy?
What's going on, Greg? Good to see you, bud.
You too. Now, the first thing I wanted to kind of talk about is, well, you've been doing some videos now for about a month, maybe is
Yeah,
when you
yeah,
yeah, when you started. But when we met, you hadn't yet decided for sure if you were going to do a channel.
that's right.
Um, so my first recollection, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my first recollection of our connection was on the community pickups each month. You started submitting some massive cards, and I'm like, this Tony guy's got some legit stuff. And that's when your name first rang out. But then I also remembered that you had sent me a picture and a story, an email that was about the time that you met Mickey Mantle and got Mickey Mantle's autograph on his 59 Tops card, a card that was given to you from your Little League coach. Is that
That's
right?
right. That's right. Well, it goes back further than that. See, that's how obscure I was in your mind. You had shared there was some video you did and there was a question, if you had $50,000, what would you do with the money? And you shared a 52 mantle who had sold, it was sold that month for 48,000 something, and you said I would buy this. And
Mm.
it was my card that had sold
Oh,
that month. So I emailed you or messaged you and I said, dude, that's my card.
I
I
remember
watch
that.
you all the time. And like, I was flattered that, I'm a fan of yours and there's my card on the screen and you're talking about it. So that was the first time. I don't
I
know if you even
remember
knew that
that,
was
but
me.
I didn't know that was you until you just said that just now.
Yeah. Yeah. That was me.
So that is really awesome. And then so we how did we kind of become buds? So at the National, I was at the in the second room, I believe, and I think it was the first night. I think it was Wednesday night. And I think we must have walked by each other or something. You just turned and you just said hello and
Yeah. That's
introduced
right.
yourself.
Hmm.
Was I with my dad or was I with Darren?
No, you were with your dad.
Okay, and you were with our buddy, right?
Yeah. With my buddy Tim.
Tim.
Yep.
And we talked for what, maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the next night, I was over in one of those memory lane, or I don't remember
Hmm.
which auction it was, but we were over kind of by the Joe Jackson
Yeah.
autograph letter, I think, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then
Yeah, and they had the
ended up
Cracker Jack
talking.
display.
Yep. And we ended up
Hmm.
talking for like a half hour that time, right?
Hmm. Yeah, that's right.
And then we saw each other the next day. You bought me a nice gift,
Yeah, yeah.
and we met up over by Ash's table, and
Uh-huh.
then we exchanged numbers, and we've been communicating extremely regularly since
Yeah,
then, right?
yeah, and that's where I met Darren and Mookie too.
Yeah. Yeah. So now let me ask you a couple things. So you decided to start the channel. You've been kind of collecting. So let's start with the collecting part. I know you collected as a kid. For people out there that don't know you, was what transpired to get you recently, and not super recently, but fairly recently, back in? Like what happened?
So like you said, like a lot of people, I collected as a kid, and then uh, got married and had kids of my own, and now I'm involved in coaching little league and working and trying to start a business. So I just didn't cards wasn't my thing, even though I kept them. I didn't get rid of them, but um, there's a local card shop here where I live in Middle Tennessee, and he would put stuff on. He'd do like lives on Instagram and things like that. And hold on a second, my computer just kicked off for some reason. Let me find you again. All right, can you see me?
Yeah.
All right, I don't know what happened right there, but he would do live stuff on Instagram and things like that, and it just kind of got me interested. So uh, just on a lark, I thought, man, there's the national, which is not the national, it's the
Right.
national in Nashville, and I guess it was I don't remember 2 years ago or whatever, and I thought on a Friday afternoon I'd go by and see that, and so I just kind of paid my entry fee and walked through there and saw cards I hadn't seen in years, and so after that the bug bit me. Um,
Now, real quick, what's that show like? Like to those of us that haven't been to the National, because we've heard about, Strongsville, and we've heard about the Philly show, and we've heard about all these different shows. I don't hear a lot about the National. Do you walk into that show and it's massive? Is it 100 tables? Is it 300 tables? What's it like?
I have no idea. Just it's I don't go to a lot of card shows, like,
Yeah.
so I've been to the National, which is huge. But I
Yeah.
mean, it's a good size. There's a local one here in town they have about every week, and it fills up like the size of a gymnasium. The
Okay.
one here in Nashville would probably fill up uh, 4 or 5 gymnasiums. I mean, it's
Okay.
it's it's at the fairgrounds, and it's like a big metal building. And then kind of like in Cleveland this year, we had the little side room. They also
Yeah.
have a side room, so yeah, it's pretty big, man.
So that sounds like maybe about a 400 table show.
Yeah.
Are there any of the national dealers that show up, or is it a lot more local guys and regional guys?
No, I mean Ash is there, REA was there. So yeah, JSA, they're all the big guys are there a lot of times. So yeah, I mean it's considered a national show. It's just, here in Nashville. They do it 2 times a year.
And when are they? Do you remember? Do you know
In the
when they are?
fall and in the spring.
So you walk into this show, and it's the first time you've really been into a show since you were a kid, and now I'm picturing this, 400 or so table show with some national dealers, and you got to be just like walking around, and you got to have fireworks going off in your head, right?
Yeah, I did. So how you always talk about focus. When I walked in there, I kind of thought, because back, when I collected when I was younger, the 50s and the 60s, I mean, those cards, I remember a kid named Jim Hupka when I was in elementary school. I don't know if his dad knew he did this, but he brought a binder full of a 1955 set, and his dad probably had a heart attack if he knew he had that there. But I remember flipping through there just like in awe. I couldn't believe I was seeing that. So it's been my goal in life to own a set like that. So when I went there, I thought, I wonder how much if people sell sets. I had no idea, and that's not a focus of mine now. But I had
Hmm.
never seen a slabbed card in my life until I walked in that show. That's how out of the hobby I was. So I remember asking somebody, like, can you take it out of that plastic, or is it in there? Because when I collected, you would put things in a basically like a penny sleeve, or you had the screw downs.
Hmm.
I had never seen a graded card in my life. I had never been on eBay, so that's how out of it I was. So yeah, I've come a long ways in the last 2 years.
Yeah. So and at that show, did you buy much? Did
I
you
didn't
kind
buy
of get to?
anything.
Oh, you just looked. You just
Just
walked around,
yeah,
and I've heard you talk about how you saw a 52 mantle, and you asked the guy if he could just hold it, right? Because you're like,
yeah.
"That's a 52 mantle."
Yeah, I'd never seen one before. So, unlike you and your dad and y'all's experience, my dad didn't do collecting with me. Now, he was at all my games and he was very involved in my life, but that wasn't one of his avenues. And
Mhm.
so we would go to the flea market in Nashville, which ironically is basically right where I went to that card show at the Nashville Fairgrounds. And when I was a kid, people would have them laid out on a table, or they'd have a bin of cards you could flip through there. But it wasn't really a card show; it was a flea market. So you right by that would be some arts and crafts and things like that. So yeah, I'd never been to a card show. So yeah, it was a new experience. I mean, I knew what they were. Well, hold on. That that's totally. I had never been to a card show to buy cards. I had been in the 90s to basically card shows, but I was going for one reason, that was to get an autograph from somebody. So that is true. But I never like walked the aisles of a card show.
So when you went to those card shows to get autographs, are those shows you were going to with Tim?
Yeah, I
So
tagged along
Tim,
with him
you're
and his dad.
right. So him and his dad Bugsy, and again, I've become friends with Tim as well. And so they would go to shows, and they weren't really buying cards. They were mostly there for the autographs, huh?
That's right. Yeah,
And so you had been to some shows and you gotten some autographs as kids, weren't really looking at the cards, more about meeting the guy, getting the ball signed or the photo signed or whatever.
yeah.
And so you go to this show in Nashville 2 years ago and you just look around.
Yeah.
And then when do you start buying? And not just when do you start buying, what do you buy first?
Um, so I decided what I wanted to do was a player run, and I thought that would be cool. And the guy that I respect as much or more than anybody who's ever played the game was Hank Aaron.
Hmm.
Uh, I'm a big I'm one of those guys, like he's the real home run king,
Hmm.
and he had class and he had dignity, and I've read some books and seen how he had all the death threats on his letters, and he started up, he actually played in the Negro League. So he spanned that time, and then he comes into the major leagues and is the most consistent home run hitter of all time. And towards the end, people are so negative towards a black man breaking Babe Ruth's record, and he handled it with class and he handled it with dignity, and he was brave in the face of all that. And then, for Barry Bonds to come along and break his record, and I'm a big, if you got caught doing steroids or you got popped, I'm an asterisk guy. Like, you shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame guy. And some people can disagree with me. That's my thoughts. So I felt bad for him, like to go through all that, have that record, and then have some dude cheat to break it. So I had a lot of empathy for him. So that was what I did. I went on a Hank Aaron run, and I found eBay, and I was like a kid in a candy shop. And so I tried to focus on, I had two rules. It had to be a PSA, and it had to be at least a 5 grade. I did make some exceptions for the first three tops
Hmm.
cards. I did four to keep them in price range, but I tried to do good eye appeal in a four. So that's the first thing I did. I was chasing Hank Aaron's, and I did that for about a year. I got that when I got that Hank Aaron rookie, that was a pretty big deal to me. And so that's what I started out doing.
So now I think this is super interesting. So you're looking and you're going, I want at least a five, except for these first three because they're pretty expensive. I'll go with a four. Did did centering, did color, did any of that play in much? And I know you mentioned eye appeal, but or was the grade the most important thing, or were there other factors that, like, when you're getting back in, are corners really important to you, I mean, or was it just the grade?
So it's really interesting that you're asking me that, because I've changed in that period of time. It was the
That's why I'm
grade.
asking. Yeah, I want to
It
know.
it was
What was it
totally the
then?
grade. Like, I bought this one, where is it? It's a 1960, and man, it's so freaking off center. I'm embarrassed now. Like, I would have never have bought that card now,
Hmm.
but see how off center it is?
Yeah,
But
it's
it's
sharp.
but it's sharp, and it's a six. So, back then I was like, well, it does the criteria. and it's a high grade, and I bought it. Now today, I'd have passed on that card every day. I wouldn't have bought that card. I would have I would have rather had a 3 that was centered. So yeah,
Right.
my tastes have changed.
When did that change? How far into this journey? If 2 years ago you go to the Nashville show, you come home, you start putting together your Hank Aaron run, and you're like, oh, this one's a 6, pretty affordable. It's got
Yeah.
sharp corners. I'm going to buy it. How long before you start to move away from the grade and into the look?
It's probably at least a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
yeah. And
yeah.
and so have you ever thought about, okay, let's go back, and I wouldn't have bought this card now. So let's get this one out. Let's get a new one in, or does that tell part of the story of your collection and you're cool with having it?
It tells part of the story. The only and what I found kind of like set building, I didn't really want to do sets once I started looking into it because I didn't want to spend a lot of money on a bunch of commons and get guys I don't really care about. I only bought one set during that time, and I bought it already made. It was a 1978 top set because that's the first year that I remember opening up a pack of cards. And
Hmm.
so when I flipped through those pages, even the commons like a Johnny LeMaster, that means something to me. I remember holding that card in my hand, when I was 9 years old. So I like that side, but to do a 1958 set, and there's going to be guys that maybe I'm kind of a heard of, but it doesn't really hold any sentimental value to me. That didn't appeal to me. So what happened was once I started building those sets, it occurred to me like a year and a half after, or a year when I was done building them, like the player run, not the set, that that 1960, I really need to replace that. But then I thought, I already did the player run now. It's done. Nobody sees it but me. Who gives a crap, And it does tell a story, so why bother? Now
Yeah.
I did do that on my mantle run because when I finished that, I made a mantle run and there were a couple of low grade cards that I had in there and I did replace those. Only like
Okay. So
two.
now, again, if you're listening to Tony, first of all, by now we're 17 minutes in. You can tell he's a super good guy. And his channel is a lot of this sort of stuff, storytelling. And again, if you've not yet hit pause and gone and subscribe to Tony, it's Southern Collector 14. You definitely want to do that. When we at time of recording, we're at 221 subscribers on Tony's channel. If
That's
we don't
insane.
get, if we don't get, I mean, if he's not over 350 in a couple of days after this airs, I'm gonna be furious at
Hey,
Midlife Nation, man.
midlife nation is amazing, but I don't
We
know if it's that amazing.
It's
That'd
that
be insane.
amazing. We got to step up. We got to add at least 129. It has 350. That's our goal, guys. We got to do this.
uh,
Um, but as you're talking about this, you started like a lot of us, that could go into vintage with the big names of the 50s and the 60s. You go Aaron, and then you go Mantle, and then what happens? Because now when I look at your Instagram posts, and now it's text messages, right? You'll text message me stuff. Eh, you've gone, you've kind of taken things to a whole new level, and I want to kind of marinate on that for a second. And I want to first say, at this point now, you've bought some errands, you've bought some mantles. What in the heck is your wife thinking? You're going in on eBay, right? You're buying these cards, you're getting all this mail showing up, you're all fired up about these cards and stuff. Is she thinking, oh, this isn't, this is okay, this is good, or is she starting to kind of look at you a little cross-eyed?
she's getting a little cross-eyed. When I bought the 52 mantle was when the crap hit the fan a little bit for a minute, and
Hmm.
she questioned me because that was a really large purchase,
Hmm.
and I had to explain to her what was going on and why, and uh, and then once I explained it to her, she didn't understand like the big cards like that hold their value. it's
Yeah.
not like I went out and bought a Ranger bass boat and it's worth half what it was when I drove it off the lot.
Right.
It's basically, I'm very blessed in my business and I take good care of my family, including my wife. And I've always been that guy and I've always put everybody before me. And honestly, I was going through a midlife crisis. Our youngest daughter was playing Division I softball. That's her senior jersey up there on in that frame. But
Uh-huh.
uh, I was I was seeing the end of the tunnel, and I was kind of questioning myself and what was I going to do now? Because I had
Mhm.
been the BP. I threw BP. If she was in a slump, I got her out of a slump. I flew to Florida when she was in a slump early in the spring and pitched to her. And and that so I was her hitting coach, I was her life coach, I was all these things, and all of a sudden I had this big void, and the
Mhm.
cards were filling a void for me, and it was a healthy void as long as I didn't take it too far. And so when I explained to her all those things and that I could turn around and sell that card and make good money off of it because I got such a
Mhm.
good deal on it, she kind of understood then. But yeah, I was questioned, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah. So now that all y'all out there are already starting to subscribe to Southern Collector 14, one of his episodes is all about his 52 mantle pickup and tells the whole story of how that played out. Very cool. So, okay. So now you've been doing the 50s and the 60s. Your wife is kind of like, eh. But you're saying, hey, it's not like a bass boat. It's like I just bought some lakefront property and it's gonna hang on. It's not like it's gonna become worthless. And she's like, okay, I get it, and she's starting to loosen the reins a little. And then you start to kind of take the dive down the rabbit hole of some pre-war stuff. How did that happen?
So somewhere along the line of me collecting, I think it was after I got the Mantle, I was Googling 1952 Mickey Mantle and stuff like that. I was trying to, I don't know, to see if anybody else had anything out there about them. And I found this Facebook group about 52 Mantle collectors. And so I was doing stuff like that. And somehow I happened upon a YouTube video of cards, and I don't even know who it was. Could have been you. I don't remember honestly. And I subscribed. And once I did that, I started getting all these other ones coming at me. And somewhere along the line, I happened upon Dave Berg's channel.
Hmm.
And man, when I hit that, that was like, where in the world? I remembered the Gaudis, right? And the T206s and all that, but the M101s, ad backs, and even the Cracker Jacks, I thought to myself, I don't remember them being that freaking cool because I didn't see those at a flea market, right? So
Right.
man, when he did his Cracker Jack episode about his Joe Jackson and told the whole story on
Oh,
that.
it's an amazing story.
Oh, dude. So I saw that and I was like, man, what else is there out there I don't know about? So I subscribed to his channel, and he would have all the food, stuff that he had bought along the way. and
Hmm.
and and I was blown away by the stuff I didn't know. But the 50s and the 60s, I could tell you by memory what a 54 Willie Mays looked like, or what a Hank Aaron rookie looked like. All those years, I knew those things. I knew what a Brooks Robinson rookie looked like. So, but man, when I started seeing that stuff, it was new and it was exciting and it was kind of
Hmm.
sexy. And
Hmm.
what else could I learn? So
Yeah.
I went back and I bought a price guide, an old Beckett price guide. No, it's not it's one of the books. He put out the yearly
Yeah.
books,
Yeah.
and it had every set in it. And I'm going back through it, and I find the Cracker Jack sets to see what they're worth. And I realize now why I never knew they were that awesome. They were in black and white. The
Mm-hmm.
pictures were black and white. They weren't even, you couldn't even tell they were red.
Hmm.
So there, I would have never have known that. How would I have known that? Back
Yeah.
when we grew up, we didn't have the internet and
No.
all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, his channel kind of changed it for me.
Okay, so if you're listening and you're going, Dave Berg, that's Blue Jacket 66 is who
Yeah.
Dave Berg is. And he is one of, I mean, at most a handful. I mean, there's a few channels out there, but his
Orlando, Collector's Dream.
Orlando, John Mangini,
Hmm.
um, uh, vintage oddball cards.
Yep.
There's a very small handful of these guys are legit experts at all these different varieties and variations, and they're literally, it's like going to a college class on, all of these small release regional sets, and you start seeing them. And I never really had the thing that I personally was always interested in is I remember seeing T206 cards at card shows and their unique size, and Gretzky buying the Honus Wagner when,
Yep.
I was at that age where I was starting to really learn about things like that. I was really drawn to those, but a lot of the others I wasn't really drawn to because they just weren't on my radar. Uh, but then once you think, yeah, those are cool, but I mean, those are old guys. I haven't heard of a lot of those guys. But as soon as you step through the doors, it's like in the Wizard of Oz when in
Yep.
the middle you open the door and you're in Munchkin land and everything goes from black and white to color, and you're just looking around and you're just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. And
And
Cracker Jack cards are red.
yeah, and when you do it, you kind of turn back and you kind of look at the black and white and you're just like, I mean, that was cool, but this is like all brand new.
Yeah.
And it's brand new. It's like someone walking into Disneyland or Disney
Yeah.
World for the first time. They're like, I don't even know where to go first.
Yeah.
This is just gonna be fun.
Yeah. So
Um,
what went hand in hand with that for me was I started doing dives into books. And
mhm.
so reading Joe Jackson books and Ty Cobb books and Babe Ruth books and Lou Gehrig books and Black Sox books. So that went hand in hand with my collecting phase during that time. And like I said, it filled a void for me and it really gave me some purpose and some focus on something that was fun. And so, yeah, that's what happened with me.
And you're going to show some cards, and you had sent me some pictures of some cards, and most of those that you sent over are some pre-war cards, and we'll take a look at those in a second. When you went pre-war, so you read a couple of books, or you kind of start to look in that direction. What do you pick up first?
The first one, I don't even think I sent a picture of this one to you, was this one right here. I just like the image of it, and it was affordable. It was on an REA, but it was this Chief Bender 1914 Cracker Jack card, and I just thought it was cool. Like I didn't know
Yeah,
any of his background and why he was called Chief and or anything, and
yeah,
but since then I've read Chief Bender's book. it's
yeah.
it's Chief Bender's Burden, and it's a great book. And man, you talk about it. You know why I read that book? Because I picked this card up and I read the back of it. And let me put my glasses on because I'm old.
Yeah.
I'm not just Southern collector. I'm old Southern collector. It says Charles Albert Bender, the famous Indian pitcher of the Philadelphia American League team, was born in Brainerd, Minnesota, May 5th, 1883. When 18 years old, he played his first baseball for the Carlisle Indian School team. And I knew that name. That was Jim Thorpe's school. And
hmm
in the spring of 1903 or 1902, he pitched for the Dickinson College of Carlisle. So, anyways, it goes on and tells a little bit about him. And just because of that bio, I was like, dang, this is awesome. So then I went on a Chief Bender run. So I'm building some Chief Benders. I think I have about 6 of his. And so I know, that's just random. Most people don't care that much about Chief Bender, but I do because it's just happenstance. I picked up that card. I liked the image, and then I read it, and I was like, "Dang, this is awesome!" So that was the first pre-war ball card I'd picked up. So, and
And for those of you out there listening, I think it was Chief Bender and Zach Wheat, I think, were the first two Native Americans to make the Hall of Fame. Okay, so you go down there and you go big with not just a Cracker Jack, but a 1914 Cracker Jack, which are more rare and more expensive, and you kind of are doing the Chief Bender run, and then how do things play out from there?
So from there, I bought like a M101 um, home run Baker card,
Let me.
which I didn't send you a picture of that one either.
That's okay.
But it's a blank back sporting. I put on my glove because I was about to go down the Chief Bender route with you.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, so yeah, that bought that one. I thought it was really cool, and I had
Yeah.
seen Dave Berg talk about these ad back cards,
Hmm.
and so that got me interested in those. So I bought one
Is
of
that
those.
was that one an ad back? I missed it.
Yeah, yeah, it's a Sporting News.
Hmm.
It doesn't have the ad back. You know, some
Oh,
of
okay.
them the
Yeah.
Sporting News are blank, or sometimes they have the Sporting News backs. But if
Right.
they're blank, they just call them the Sporting News set.
Right.
So yeah, it's one of the Felix Mendelssohn cards. You know, he was out of Chicago, and so David talked a lot about that. So I did my own research, and found out all about Felix Mendelssohn and his company and what he did and the different sets he put out and all that kind of stuff. So that kind of stuff is really what kind of greases my wheels. It ain't just the cards, it's the history of
Yeah.
the cards, and it's
Yeah.
the player on the card and his history as well.
Okay. So now that you took the glove off, and I'll ask you to put it back on and show me what it was that you were going to show us that required the glove to be on.
So
And I'll put it back. Go ahead.
I got all these out of my safe, but this is where Greg at Midlife Cards comes in. So, so when this item came up for auction, there I did it. I mean, again, go look at my channel. You'll see the whole story about it. But when I saw this ball come up for auction, the fact it had Chief Bender on it, of all pre-war guys, it was Chief Bender, kind of sealed the deal that I knew it was talking to me. But yeah, that's the Babe Ruth autograph ball, and here's my buddy Chief Bender
Unbelievable.
on it. But it's a beautiful ball. I keep moving it the wrong way, but bold blue ink, and it's got a little bit of shellac brushed real thin on the
Yeah.
signature, which kept it good all those years. But a little thicker on the Chief Bender. But but anyway, anyways, when I saw that, I knew it was meant for me, and I already knew it before I saw the Chief Bender autograph. But
And I don't want to give too much away on that story because how that whole thing went down, that's a massive item, and there's a massive story that goes along with that whole item that makes it, I think, exponentially cooler. So we'll just
and
say,
if
yeah,
you
go
want
ahead.
to see how Greg came into play on that, you got to watch my episode because I'm not going
There
to
you
tell you.
go. So let's just leave that one there and use that as a hook.
It's a
Uh,
tease. That's what we call it in the
Yeah,
industry.
yeah,
We
yeah.
call it a
We got
tease.
to do that. So, but a very cool item with an incredible story and how it all ties together. And I played a very small role in
Oh,
it,
you played a
but
huge role.
well, so so you got Chief Bender. You got a Cracker Jack. You've got you know you're starting to go down some pretty cool cards, and you kind of hinted at it earlier that you sort of had a little bit of an affinity for Shoeless Joe Jackson, and you were
That was
reading
the
some
next one.
Shoeless. All right, so let me pull you back up on the solo view. So you've got a famous in bar Joe Jackson that is gorgeous.
Yep.
Absolutely gorgeous card.
I had gone after one in an auction previous to this one, and I didn't land it. I was trying to be, careful and not spend too much for a card. And so I had reached out to Dave Berg about it because I had talked to him a few times about some things. And I had reached out to him about it, and he said, yeah, man, I mean, Joe Jackson's going up and all that. So when that one was up, I kind of reached out and told him the price, and he said, "Man, go for it. That sounds like it's right where it needs to be if you can get it at that price." So he kind of played a little bit of role in that one.
So that was the first Joe Jackson that you got, right?
Yep.
And then since then you've gotten a few more.
Yeah.
I'm gonna I'm gonna also here toggle so that people can see a real clean picture of these. So I'm gonna pull up on the screen again. This is Tony, and he's Southern Collector 14. If we look at this screen we got here,
Yep.
that one on the right is the Famous bar that we just looked at in the
Yeah, that's it.
SGC2,
Yep.
and on the left you also have a Boston Store Joe Jackson.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah. That
um,
now the Boston Store, that one is the most expensive Joe Jackson I own. That bad boy had been sitting on eBay and they had a real high price on it. I don't remember who the seller was. And on that one too, I reached out to Dave on it. I just reached out to him after I bought it and told him I got it. He couldn't believe I got it on eBay and what I paid for it. But I talked them down off what they had. I just made them an offer, and they came back and counter offered. I think I did one more, and I was able to get it I mean, it was expensive. I ain't gonna lie, but there's hardly any of those cards out there. I mean, the fact that one is out there that I could get, I think the pop count on that one with that back is like 10.
mhm.
So that the 1917 Boston Store. There's also the Collins McCarthy. There's a bakery card and some other ones like that. I think there's 4 backs. So and they're all very low pop counts. So to have that card in my collection is honestly, that's a gem. Like that sucker right there is one that I can't never let go because I'll never replace it.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And it's so interesting, these cards here in the teens like this. There are so many that have different backs and different who released them, but the pictures and the images on the front are so similar and all that kind of
I mean,
stuff. Here,
that's the back.
let me swap this out here. Let's go there's the back. Yeah, look at
Yeah.
that.
So it's just advertising of what's crazy is, the Boston Store, I started looking it up, trying to figure out what that was. And it was in
Mhm.
Chicago, not in Boston. So I figured it was in Boston, but it wasn't. It's a Midwestern store. And just the story, the ad backs themselves is so cool because there's really unknown of how they distributed them. We know how they were sold, and the reason they're called sporting news sets in the M101s is because there was an ad in Sporting News that Felix Mendelssohn put in there to sell them to companies and an individual. You could order a set, but it's really neat. And you think about those things being almost 110 years old. I mean, that just
Yeah.
blows my mind. So
Mhm.
yeah, and Joe Jackson in his story, again, here's a tease for you. Watch
Yeah.
my Joe Jackson episode, and I
Yeah.
talk a lot about his story. And he gets a bad rap for who he was, but he was a good dude. He was well, he's back in that pre-war era, and back then in those early days before 1919, there were games thrown all the time. I mean, Ty Cobb and Tris Speaker got together and threw a game one time, and Hal Chase was synonymous with throwing games. So they just didn't think anything of it. It's like, who's going to do anything? It's no big deal. We're just going to do this and make more money. And unfortunately for them, they were made an example out of, and rightfully so. They should have.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend that one. And as we're talking here about Joe Jackson, we'll go ahead and go to the next screen here. You've
Yep.
got 2 more Joe Jacksons that we've pulled up. Now we've got the 1915 Cracker Jack, which to me is one of the most epic cards in all of cards. And
Yes.
then
Absolutely.
on the right, the W514, which is like a strip card, Joe Jackson. And I know that you are you say you're not a set builder, but you are working on a project on those W514 cards. Tell us
Yeah, I
about
am.
that.
So what I'm trying to do, that the 1919 through 21 W514 cards are that period of time when the Black Sox scandal happened. So, there were 8 men who were kicked out of baseball for life. 7 of them had to have a card in that set, and so I'm trying to collect all the White Sox in there, but especially the Black Sox players. So I think I have there's only 7 of the Black Sox in there. One guy doesn't have a. In fact, he didn't have any cards hardly. But the 7, I think I have 4 of them now. I still lack 3. I need the Buck Weaver. I can't remember. I've got a list on my phone, but
Mhm.
in fact, I had 2 of them come in over the weekend. I got them on eBay.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm narrowing those down. But the Cracker Jack one, uh, to me, that's a top 10 card in the hobby. Period.
No doubt.
The look of it, it's iconic, and I know a lot of people try to stay away from authentic altered cards, and I would never alter a card myself. Uh, but man, that one right there, I made an exception. I I saw that on a Leland auction, and it's got that. If you'll notice, right to the right of his right shoulder and his chin, there's like a little white scrape right there on the card.
Mhm.
But other than that, man, that thing is flawless, and it looks like it may have been
True.
trimmed at the top. So, but that again, that's one of my cornerstones too, and it's beautiful. But unlike the 1917 Boston store, I mean, if I don't plan on ever parting with this Cracker Jack card, but let's just say I had to. I know I can get another one day. I don't know what I have to
Mhm.
pay for it, uh, but but I could replace that one. The 17 I can't replace,
Mhm.
but yeah, that honestly that Cracker Jack card is top 3 as far as my favorite cards in my collection.
Yeah, to me, it's top 3 in my favorite cards in the hobby.
Yeah.
Um, and again, you talk about more in depth on Joe Jackson. I learned a lot. I listened to your Joe Jackson episode on the way to work one day during my commute, and then when I got to work, I and you were showing the cards because you usually talk a little bit, tell a little bit of history and stuff, and then you show the cards.
Hmm.
And there were several things about Joe Jackson that I had never heard that you shared, and I thought it was very cool. Now I did a little bit of a sneak preview on the next slide. So another guy that you're kind of got a few cards on is
Yeah.
this guy, and these are a couple of beautiful matching 4.5s.
Yep.
Uh, tell me about how you got the Leaf Jackie Robinson.
So on that one, just like I have an affinity for Hank Aaron and what he went through as a man, not just a ball player, but Jackie Robinson. I mean, dude, like I grew up in the South, right? And my mother, she'll tell me stories about remembering when there was a colored water fountain and a white water fountain at her university, which was a Christian university of all things, and they
Jeez.
had different bathrooms. And I was never raised in a racist home. Like my parents, they they had black friends, they had white friends, they had Hispanic friends. It didn't matter, and so the fact that that used to go on in our history is such a black eye, that
Hmm.
in the fact that these men, just because of the color of their skin, weren't allowed to play baseball of all things in the major leagues, just blows my mind. So going back to that, I feel so much respect towards this guy and what he went through that when I was going to get his ultimate card, being his rookie card, which actually I believe there's 2 rookie cards, but that's another story.
Yeah.
But the one that most people in the hobby recognize, I wanted it to be a freaking awesome card. I didn't want just a run of the mill card. So I was really picky, man. It took me almost a year to find the one that I wanted, and it had to be really bold yellow, and the centering was going to be what it was, but I wanted it good registration because a lot of the Leaf cards can look like you need 3D glasses to look at them. The registration can be so bad. And also the Leaf cards, a lot of them, they can be a 6, but the color on them is really dull. And it's almost like you see the cardboard coming through the paint,
Hmm.
and they don't get discounted as far as grade goes because it's a print deal, but I didn't care. I would rather have this one than a 7 with the cardboard showing through it. So, man, when I saw this one I got this one off eBay. I reached out to the guy and talked to him, and I thought that he had taken his filter on his phone and enhanced the color on it. So I
Mm.
wanted him to send me some better pictures to see, and he sent them to me, and it was, man, that it was just like it shows right there. That is not enhanced. It is that yellow, and
Wow.
so that's the one I got.
Yeah, these two cards, I mean, when we talk about the top cards in the hobby, for me, both of these are, along with the Joe Jackson Cracker Jack, to me are all three top 10 for sure.
Yeah,
Maybe higher than that. And you have absolutely stunning examples of both of them. That 52 tops, Jackie, I know you got fairly recently, right?
I did. I got that from our buddy Ash. He so again, I was doing a Robinson run, and I was down on the main cards. Now, you can go off the beaten path with some stuff, but as far as his tops and Bowman, and I've got his 47 Bond Bread, uh, I lacked that card. That was the last one, and I wanted it to be good too, because as well as I do, the 52s, they can have snow on them. They can be really off center, and I
Hmm.
wanted a centered one, and I wanted bright colors. I'm really big on the bright color. That's a thing that will reoccur with my collection when in the recent history of it. So
Hmm.
yeah, when I saw that one, I called Ash and like, dude, I think this is the one. And so that's how I got that one.
Beautiful 52 tops, Jackie, and 49 leaf, Jackie. Got a couple more cards that we you sent me pictures of that I'm gonna have up here on the screen.
Hmm.
Next up, let's start with that 34 Gaudy Lou Gehrig. Um, I mean, to me, that's the best looking Gehrig card.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
know. I just think it's just such a cool image of him. And then it's got the Lou Gehrig says on it in the 34 set. And how long ago did you pick that one up?
Uh, Man, I'm terrible with time. It's probably about 8 or 9 months ago.
Okay.
I can't remember completely. Um, yeah, that one's special to me because I just became a granddad, and
Yeah.
my grandson was born on Thursday, and my father died of Lou Gehrig's disease, and
Oh, I didn't know
so
that.
yeah, so yeah, I wanted a Lou Gehrig in my collection, and that one was a really good example. That's the only one I own actually, and I wanted to get it kind of to honor my dad. And honestly, man, it's sad that he ain't here to see his great grandson. But yeah, Gehrig was such an important figure in what he did, and I read the book about Lou Gehrig, and when it goes through when he's starting to the symptoms of Lou Gehrig's disease are setting in, and he has no idea what's going on. And he's having his legs and his muscles are aching, and he keeps stumbling. A lot of those symptoms are the same ones my father went through. So it was very emotional for me to read that book, and so I have a emotional tie to him and what he went through. Um, so I know you didn't
Wow,
know
I
that, but
I didn't know that. That that's
no,
that's
man,
really,
it's
yeah,
it's it's good. I love talking about my dad. He was a
yeah.
fine man. He just he lived with he had it for a year, and he just died in his sleep. And
Mm.
so yeah, it was it is what it is. We need to find a cure. Is bottom line.
Yeah, yeah. My brother, who's in his 40s as well, his one of his best friends is about 3 years in with it, and he's starting to really start to struggle too. And it's one of those things that you know, it's one of the tragedies of life is that these things exist. And it's
Yeah,
something I'll never understand.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
On the right, you've got quite a cool little story, which I touched on very briefly earlier. But tell us the story real quickly about this 59 tops Mickey Mantle, which is autographed.
Yeah, so that card when I was 12 years old and playing Little League Baseball, I was eat up with baseball, and I collected cards, and I was the kid in class that knew baseball history. I remember one time we had a rain day at my school. We didn't have a gym, so when it rained, you had to stay in the classroom. And our PE coach was a big Yankees fan, and we had he would play hangman. I don't know if that's politically correct anymore. You're a teacher, I don't know, but he would ask questions, and then he got to the very end, and this was for all the marbles, and he asked the question, who threw a perfect game in the 1957 World Series, and who was it against, and what was his name? And I was the little kid that raised my hand and said Don Larson, and it was
Hmm.
against the Dodgers, and all the kids were like, yeah, because we won. I had this moment of glory. So that was me. My coach recognized that, and for some reason had an affinity towards the fact I love baseball, and he gave me that card, man, and blew me away. And I don't know whether it was in his collection or he bought it and gave it to. I don't know. I never asked him. In fact, I don't even remember his name, but it was a very nice thing he did. So 2 years later, when I was 14 years old and a freshman in high school, Mickey was on the circuit of grand openings for stores. This would have been like 1984, and he came to Nashville, Tennessee, to a grand opening of Service merchandise. It was just they sold diamond rings and bicycles and everything. And he was there one night, and you could get 2 items signed. So he signed that card right in front of me, and I got a photograph that Bugsy, Tim's dad, took of me standing right there in front of Mickey. And it was, my palms are sweaty and my heart was beating out of my chest, and it was a pretty awesome moment. So that card right there, when I said top three, that's one of the three, even though that's not one of the most expensive cards I own, but it has all the memories and the
Oh
background
yeah.
hooked to it too.
Oh yeah. That is awesome. And then real quick, let's just talk briefly about these two. I know this Sporting Life Honus Wagner you picked up fairly recently.
Yeah,
And then on the right, you actually did an episode, a Ty Cobb episode recently, right?
that's
And
right.
in that one, you share the sepia postcard and talked about how it's the first postcard that you've purchased.
Yep.
Um, those are obviously, again, this is just to give you a little bit of a taste of Tony's incredible collection, which he's been building for a whopping 2 years. Um, we're about 52 minutes in. I know that
Oh man,
for
I had no
me,
idea it was that long.
yeah, for me that's hard to believe, because I've had so much fun hanging out with you. Uh, it's weird how this hobby works, and as much fun as we've had talking about these cards and these memories and these stories and you know the history and the connections of the different cards and stuff, it's just crazy that you recognize me at the national.
Man, you're a
And
star, dude. What are you talking
I'm not a
about?
star.
You're the
I'm not.
man. Hey,
I'm
if it
not.
if it weren't for you, I wouldn't even be on this episode, right? I wouldn't even have a channel. So yeah, man, you're like my hero.
Oh
You-
well,
You're good.
I mean, but you just you stopped me and said hello, and it made an impression on me, even though we just talked for like 3-4 minutes there. I remember that next morning I went to breakfast with Darren of Return to Collecting and his dad and his brother, and I was like, dude, you know who I ran into last night? Tony Liebrick. And he goes, oh yeah, he's always got such awesome pickups in your videos. And I'm like, yeah. And I was like, super cool guy. And so we were like talking about you at breakfast, and then I didn't know we'd run into each other again. And then
Yeah.
here we are, like I'm texting with you every day. We're good
Yeah.
pals. And
Well, I
so
was even at the YouTube get together, and I didn't even say hello because you were over there in your circle, and I'd already talked to you. I didn't want to be like fangirling, and like you'd have thought I was weird or something. So,
I, I'm
uh,
I hope I don't come across. I hope
no,
I hope when
man,
you approached me and we talked, I hope that I was a good dude. And
no, you were
I mean,
awesome.
so yeah, I mean, it's just amazing how this hobby does this, and even the fact that your good pal Tim, who I'm happy to call a friend as well, as you got memories of his dad took the picture of you
Yeah,
when you got the mantle, and
yeah.
and here you are going to card shows in the National with him this year. It's just crazy how this whole thing kind of intertwines, and it's really cool the friendships that we've made from this, and
Yeah,
and
it
I'm
is.
really
That's
happy to call you a friend, and
yeah,
and I'm
same here.
thrilled to have you on the channel. And if by now, if we haven't convinced you that you got to be a subscriber to Southern Collector 14, I don't know what we got to do, but you won't regret it, and it'll be a channel that you'll really look forward to his posts. Is there
And
anything
you got to get some Southern drawl in this
you
YouTube
gotta,
community, man.
you gotta?
You got all these Yankees and West Coast guys, and people tell me I
Hey,
have an accent. I don't even know I do, but hey, man, whatever.
it's funny because I like college football. I always have, and for a long time, there's not really been a team that I've rooted for. But I told you I'm jumping on the Tennessee bandwagon this year, and
Got a
so
big one this weekend, man. We're in
yeah.
Athens. We'd knock off the
Well,
Bulldogs.
I know, and Georgia had a big game last weekend that they're coming
Yep.
off of, and then Alabama played LSU, which just the fact that one of them got a loss kind of helps because it puts them at 3 losses. I mean, there's all these things going on, so it's fun. It's fun rooting with you, and you guys letting me join in the fun this year as a
Oh
Tennessee
yeah.
fan, and so, man, thanks for coming on. I am 100% certain that this will not be the last time that Tony will be seen on the Midlife Cards channel. I'm
Well,
I'm
thank
certain of
you.
that.
I'm honored to be on here, and I just feel very blessed to be on the airways with Greg.
Oh well, you're
So
you're far too kind, but your collection's awesome. You're an awesome guy, and I think that I had a blast. So if anybody out there is listening and had a blast, that's great. If not, that's okay because I know the two of us had a good time. And go check out Southern Collector 14, my guy Tony. Awesome channel, awesome collection, awesome history and stories that he shares along the way, and you won't regret it.
thanks, Greg.
Thanks, bud.